My husband is the past now. He is my real family. My wife declared her new lover as family on stage during our company gala, while I sat in the audience watching her erase me publicly, not knowing I had a hidden clause ready to take everything back. I was halfway through my second glass of champagne when she said it loud and clear, proudly, as if declaring victory. He's family now, she said in a honeyed voice into the microphone, resting her hand on his chest as if she had just awarded him a damn Nobel Prize. The cameras clicked. People smiled. A few raised their glasses pretending they hadn't just witnessed a public execution. She never looked at me once. I wasn't at the head table, not even on the seating chart. My badge said consultant printed in small gray letters, the same font they use for disclaimers and legal obligations. She had made sure of that, and the funny thing is, I didn't blink. I just swallowed her toast with my money in the room I paid for under the logo I registered. Her mother looked directly at me during the applause. Briefly, her smile didn't waver, but her eyes twitched. Old money arrogance mixed with cheap triumph. Her estate lawyer, Mr. Walters, patted her on the shoulder and whispered something. Maybe something about appearances, maybe about the fact that I was still breathing. The new guy, Andrew Anders, or whatever prefabricated NBA player name he had, wrapped his arm around her waist as if he had been there from day one, as if he knew the struggle. He didn't. He never worked from the garage, never slept under the desk during the first funding drought, never mortgaged a thing. But now, family, what do you do when the woman you loved rewrites history while you're still alive to hear it? You smile, you look at your watch, and you wait, because that's the part she never understood. I don't raise my voice. I raise documents for everyone to see. No, I didn't storm out. I didn't throw my glass. I didn't grab the mic and scream. I built this. That would have given her what she wanted. Drama. Proof of my fragile ego. I just drank the last sip of champagne. I left the glass on the nearest tray and nodded towards the stage like a man admiring a tombstone he had carved himself. If you're still listening to this and wondering why I didn't fight back right then and there, believe me, I did, just not in the way they expected. And if you've made it this far, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. 90% of you never do, but it helps more than you think and allows my team to keep bringing you stories like this that most people wouldn't believe until it happens to them. Back to that night, they started playing music. Not a playlist, an orchestra. She had a string quartet flown in from Berlin. I didn't even know I was still paying their advance for her. She said it made her feel elegant. I wonder if it made her feel elegant when I was washing ramen bowls in the sink we shared 6 years ago while she cried about being nothing and I told her she was everything. I should have choked on those words when she took the stage like a startup duchess, soaked in investor applause. What hurt wasn't the betrayal, it was the audience's complicity. They weren't strangers. They were people I had met, presented the project to, convinced. Half the board knew me as the quiet one. Hell, I mentored 2 of the junior vice presidents. They watched her erase me with a single sentence and smiled because the product was doing well. The market loved us. Power loves a narrative. That's when I noticed the guest registry next to the reception table. A standard digital tablet. Every name logged with a timestamp, facial recognition, signature swipe. It was subtle, easy to miss. I didn't miss it because 3 years ago in a cold conference room with a stubborn junior partner, I drafted something called Clause 94B, buried deep in the founding agreement. It didn't mean much. Then, just a safeguard, just in case. Now it meant everything. And at 8:02 a.m., Monday morning, it would detonate silently and with precision, no explosion, just a shift like a glacier cracking under its own weight. She wanted to pose with her new family under the banner I designed. Let her. The photograph would be her victory lap. It would also be the evidence. The photo was staged like a coronation. My wife, ex-wife in principle, if not on paper, stood between them like royalty. One hand around her new toy's waist, the other resting confidently on Walter's arm. The lighting crew had just finished adjusting the softbox bounce off the gold background we used for launch events. The banner read, "A new era in human design." I remember because I wrote that slogan on a coffee-stained napkin while we ate takeout in a parking lot. I still have the napkin. She probably thinks one of her interns came up with it. The photographer took at least 30 shots. She kept adjusting her smile as if it were part of her business presentation. Polished, deliberate, hollow. Walters, as always, stood tall as if he owned her mother's lineage, which, legally speaking, he sort of did. And then there was Andrew, or maybe it was Adrian. It doesn't matter. The man looked like he was grown in a lab for Linden profile pictures. He couldn't stop smiling, and I couldn't stop watching the slow-motion detachment of my own past. She posted the photo less than 10 minutes after it was taken. No approval chain, no second thought, no filter, just brazen arrogance with the caption, "True family, true vision." And as if that wasn't enough, she tagged Forbister, Business Insider, and the lead investor's daughter, the daughter I once bought coffee for before she got her first analyst job. It's funny how quickly loyalty melts when champagne is involved. I don't think she knew I saw her post it live. I was no more than 6 feet away near the bar where the guest registry tablet was, almost invisible among the floral centerpiece and brushed steel water pitchers. Standard Gala protocol. Time-stamped RSVP logs. But our guest list was linked to the custodian index, and that meant every name mattered. There was Walter S. Franklin, checked in at 6:43 p.m. Relationship Advisory Council, Franklin Estate Management. His full title entered by the assistant working the front desk, who liked to be precise. A man of her mother's generation. He wouldn't have noticed. He certainly wouldn't have known what it meant for him to pose with the founder's spouse under a banner paid for with Series A money, while contractually marked as a legacy legal stakeholder. Clause 94B didn't need fireworks. It just needed proof of alignment during a public, investor-marked event. The clause didn't even mention infidelity. That part was poetic. The real trigger conflict of representation with declared shareholders during a formal brand presentation. In plain English, don't pose with your mother's lawyer in front of the logo your husband still legally owns while calling your new boyfriend family for the record. She didn't notice me leaving. No one did. I didn't even bother with my coat. I left my name badge on the bar next to a sweaty glass of ginger ale. As I passed the valet stand, I took one last look at the building. Tall, beautiful, just as she always wanted. Inside, people were dancing to the Yas ensemble she chose. The lights flickered. Everything looked perfect from the outside. She thought the cameras were her weapon. She never realized I was the one watching the footage that mattered. There was a second iPad under the counter connected to the same guest registry system, synced to a backup drive in a server closet she forgot we still rented because I paid that bill personally every year. The woman who once yelled at me for hiding receipts now prided herself on being hands-off in the bin. She thought delegating was power. She never learned that disinterest is the fastest path to defeat, and she still had no idea that the Gala wasn't the peak of her empire. It was the last, dazzling snapshot before the free fall. Let her smile, the metadata would do the talking. The folder was beige, brittle at the edges, and slightly warped from years at the bottom of my home filing cabinet, wedged between dental records and the warranty for a printer we never used. On the tab in my own handwriting, Constitution drafts. Final, nothing sexy, nothing dramatic, just years of paranoia disguised as preparation. I remembered the day I wrote it. She was walking barefoot through our living room, pitching to invisible investors while I was hunched over my laptop, typing with one hand and holding a calculator with the other. She was brilliant back then, no doubt, with a conviction like a wildfire, but she was also reckless, emotionally high risk. I loved her too much to say it out loud, but I planned for the day she either burned out or burned me with her. That's why I added it. The Founder's Integrity Provision, Section 94B, buried under the General Dissolution Guidelines. It was simple, elegant, and so boring in legal jargon that no one on her side flagged it. Not even Walters, who was too busy posturing during the equity negotiations to notice that the words custodian override were a loaded gun. The clause looked like a safeguard in case of corporate sabotage, but its real power wasn't in what it said, but when it could be triggered. If during any formal investor meeting a designated shareholder engaged in acts of public misrepresentation or colluded with unauthorized parties during official presentations, temporary custodial control of all voting shares would revert to the initial funder for a maximum of 72 hours. No court, no hearing, just time-stamped proof and a registered breach of transparency designed for hostile takeovers, or galas. The clause had been reviewed only once by her legal team early in the Series A pitch. She skimmed it, laughed, and called me a paranoid genius husband. I called her my little flamethrower. We kissed on the couch. Then she got distracted by a potential Forbes feature and never looked back. What she didn't realize was that the trust that was created to hold her shares was already partially tied to that clause. And while she was celebrating a new era, I was opening the original PDF on a burner laptop in my garage. The file had a digital signature from all three of our lawyers, dated, sealed, immutable. The kind of paper no one thinks to check until it shows up years later with a trail that burns. She never asked why I refused to digitize our Constitution files. She said I was being a dinosaur. I told her some things were safer covered in dust. She scoffed at me for that. She scoffed at the metal safe, the locked drawers, the external backups. She called it startup doomsday prepping. But that paper was her doomsday. There were 4 printed copies, one in my safe, one in a bank safety deposit box, one filed with our corporate legal assistant marked inactive, and one laminated in an envelope labeled activate, only if necessary. She once used that envelope to prop up a wobbly kitchen table. She had no idea that the clause didn't just freeze the board, it paused all changes, all votes, all restructuring. If someone tried to pull a stunt like announcing a new family member while posing with someone legally embedded in a rival estate firm, it would be reviewed under the figure of breach of fiduciary duty. Her lover was a nobody. But Walters had approved 2 separate financing deals involving estate assets and had been flagged in our compliance log. All it took was his name on the guest registry, his presence on the gala stage, and her voice on video calling him family. A triple match. Clause 94B lit up like a Christmas tree. No confrontation, no scandal, just the silent control slipping from her hands and back into mine for 72 very powerful hours, and I wasn't going to waste a single one of them. I didn't need revenge. I had the paperwork. The email left the server at exactly 8:02 a.m. Not 8:1, not 8:3. The automation script had been written with surgical precision, down to the second. I had written it myself 3 years ago. On a weekend she had gone to a wellness retreat, and I stayed home with a bottle of whiskey and a spreadsheet full of conditional clauses. Yes. Then, the file was called Safeguard, Bajation, Integrity, 9.4 BD. The script was embedded in a dead email account we used during the early development stage, a ghost inbox we once created to avoid Google Drive limits. It hadn't sent a message in 1176 days until that morning. It wasn't even the first thing I did that day. I made coffee, just sat at the kitchen table, read some notes, then opened the server terminal, verified the timestamp alignment, and watched the countdown hit 0. The moment it did, the email disappeared from the panel. No, are you sure? No drama. Just a clean, surgical delivery. Subject Clause 94B. Activation event confirmed. The body was almost blank. A single sentence, per the founding agreement and verified documentation, custodian override is initiated. Below, 3 attachments. Guest registry Gala Meta Autos CSV extracted from the server. I still had admin access to thanks to a forgotten first-year credential. Snapshot, badge entry, badge event PNG, a clean export from the digital registry system showing a time-stamped entry for Walter. That Franklin at 6:43 p.m. Title Legal Advisor. Franklin Estate Group Capture, badge speech, badge B mark, badge time MP4. A 42-second video clip extracted from the overhead camera. It showed her on the gala stage smiling, looking directly at the crowd and saying, "He's family now." Walters was right behind her. Her lover's hand was on her waist. All synced, all logged, all damning. The 4th attachment was the PDF, pre-signed, verified by all parties 3 years prior, notarized, encrypted, stored in 3 locations. When the system saw the metadata match, a confirmed conflicting party appearing in a public presentation backed by a founding shareholder during a recognized investor event, it executed the clause without further review. That's the beauty of smart compliance. You don't need to argue. You just set the mechanism and let entropy take its course. Somewhere in the city, the compliance officer of the firm we had hired during our Series A round had just opened his inbox, still half asleep, probably expecting a Monday full of backlog and billing. Instead, he found a nuclear device dressed in legal etiquette. They would read the clause, then reread it, then scroll through the attachments, match the name to the guest list, the timestamp to the footage. They would hear the words come out of her mouth with her lawyer behind her and the romantic risk at her side. And they would know this wasn't petty, it wasn't impulsive. It was a silent execution carried out by the very clause they had all agreed to in the comfort of a boardroom. Back then, when they thought the threat would come from competitors, not from the co-founder's own bed. At 8:07 a.m., my red receipt confirmed the email had been opened. At 8:14 a.m., the automated compliance system flagged it for board notification. At 8:23 a.m., the first internal chat log appeared on the mirror channel I still monitored in my anonymous setup. Can someone explain this clause 94B again? It says, custodian override. It's active. The message had 3 replies. The last one said, check the attachments. He really did it. I didn't reply. I just closed the terminal and took another sip of coffee. It tasted stronger than usual. She had no idea what had just landed in her company's bloodstream. But by lunchtime, the symptoms would begin. The first call came at 9:20 a.m. Her phone lit up with W. Franklin, private line, and she didn't even blink before answering. She was still in silk pajama pants, sipping an oat milk latte and scrolling through the Gala press coverage on her tablet. The photo was everywhere. Teskians called it a bold, generational rethinking. She smirked at that. Walter, she said breezily. Speakerphone on, the tablet propped on her knees. I saw the coverage, we crushed it. But his voice didn't match the mood. We have a problem, he said slow and clipped. No, you have a problem. She rolled her eyes. It's not even 9:30 and you're already cryptic. You activated a custody clause. 94B specifically. She sat up. What clause from the founding agreement? He said, and there was a rustle of paper on the other end. I could hear it. The sound of a man shuffling through something old and dangerous. It was tied to investor transparency at formal company events. Your husband, he stopped. He structured it. She scoffed. We're still on this. What does that have to do with me? He hesitated. Then came the sound of pure, aged panic in his voice. You posed with me on stage during a designated investor event. You called me family. There was a pause, as if the weight of the words hadn't landed yet. She looked at herself in the mirror, still smiling from the night before. And what are you family more or less? My mother's lawyer, her trustee, her problem solver. This is just optics. It's not optics when you say it on video in front of the brand banner, while I'm formally registered on the guest list. She froze. He continued, his voice tightening. An email was sent to the compliance officer. 8:02 a.m. It came from his old admin account with no signature, just metadata, attachments, time-stamped footage snapshot of the guest registry. I've already seen them. She stood up, her coffee splashing. What the hell are you saying, Walter? I'm saying, he exhaled, that you are no longer the majority shareholder. Her hands gripped the edge of the kitchen island. Excuse me. Clause 94B states that if a shareholder is found to be publicly aligned with conflicting fiduciary agents during formal investor activities, and if it is verified by time-stamped documentation, all voting rights temporarily revert to the founding custodian for a 72-hour review period, which as of 8:02 this morning is not you. She stared at her reflection. He did this. He prepared for this. You did this, she snapped. It's a technicality. Technicalities are what I'm paid to monitor. And from a legal standpoint, you raised a neon sign that screamed breach. I should have recused myself the moment you invited me onto that stage, but I didn't. And now? And now what? Her voice cracked like a whip. Now the board is frozen. Your votes don't count. The COO has been notified. An external trustee has been activated for review. I've already received a formal notification that my estate representation rights with your family may be terminated due to a conflict of interest. Now she was pacing, grabbing her hair with one hand, the other clenched at her side. We can fight this. I would advise against it. The paper trail is clean. Legally, it's damning. Emotionally, it's nuclear. You posed with your mother's estate lawyer and a romantic partner on stage while excluding the founder, who technically still owns all the intellectual property and licensed infrastructure. She looked out the window, her mouth dry. He's bluffing. Then I suggest you call his bluff quickly because the custody control clock is ticking. 72 hours is all he needs. And if he acts during that window, he won't. He wouldn't dare. Walter didn't answer, did he? She asked again, but softer. Look, I've known you since you were 13, he said finally. I watched you bulldoze every obstacle. I believed in you. I still do. But this time you walked on stage with a knife and handed him the sheath. Click, he hung up. The silence that followed was thicker than anything Walter could have said. She stood there in the kitchen alone, the sun streaming in, illuminating the still open press release on her tablet. True family, true vision. And below it the smiling photo of her, Andrew, and the man whose name had just erased her from her own empire. Clause 94B. She didn't even remember signing it, but he did. At exactly 12:03 p.m., the boardroom door was locked from the inside. 13 chairs, one speakerphone, one pitcher of water sweating in the center of the table. Half the board looked like they hadn't slept. The other half looked like they had just realized their names were on the wrong side of history. Today there were no floral arrangements, no Catherine croissants, no glossy folders. This wasn't optics, this was Triumph. Her seat remained empty. Her nameplate had been discreetly removed. Outside, in the glass hallway beyond the reception, she was pacing in heels she hadn't quite pulled on. Makeup half done, phone in hand barking into the receiver. No one opened the door, no one greeted her, not even the receptionist, who just typed notes with her headphones on and avoided eye contact like it was company policy. Inside, the meeting began. First, the acknowledgement of the 8:02 a.m. compliance alert. The VP of Compliance, Grande de Mars Silver Hair, ex-SEC, known for her steel neutrality, read from her prepared statement per Clause 94B of the Founder's Integrity Provision. A documented fiduciary breach has activated the Custodian Override Protocol. All voting rights of Shareholder B are frozen pending a review. Shareholder B was her. The COO, Devon Clark, rubbed his temples and muttered, "Holy hell." Devon was a good guy, nervous, fidgety, smart in the way you need in middle management. He looked up and asked, "So the founder has custody?" Rand nodded. "As of this morning, yes, for 72 hours, he cleared his throat. And he plans to act." A pause. Rand skimmed the packet in front of her. "He has submitted 3 motions via the trustees' drop box, all marked confidential, all within his rights under the override conditions." There was a nervous murmur. Someone whispered, "He's going to lose his mind." Devon blinked. He already lost it publicly on video with the lawyer. One of the junior board members, newly promoted, looked confused. "That guy isn't her mother's estate manager." "Yes," Rand said dryly, "and he's listed on the SEC filings as a passive financial interest holder, which combined with her public endorsement of him at a formal investor event, creates a situation that was, to put it mildly, the chairman, a quiet old guard type with a portfolio older than most of the staff's parents, tapped his pen slowly. And what about the boyfriend?" Rand didn't look up. No formal registered employment, no vesting schedule, no NDA, no clearance. "So he's a legal liability," she said. "He's not staff, he's not family, he's not protected." Another board member muttered, "So why the hell was he on stage?" Grande closed her folder. "I imagine the founder asked himself the same question years ago, which is why he drafted Clause 94B to begin with." Outside the door, she tried her ID card. It blinked red. She tried again. Red. The head of security appeared at the end of the hall, polite, but firm. "Your credentials are on hold. We've been advised to conduct a security revalidation." She laughed. "Security revalidation. I built this board." He didn't flinch. "We're following internal protocol." "Ma'am, sir." That word landed harder than she expected. Inside, the VP of Compliance continued. "There's a proposal on the table," Rand said, "to appoint a neutral third-party trustee to manage all shareholder decisions for the next quarter. If approved, all board votes initiated during the override window will require a dual signature authentication, one from the trustee, one from the head of compliance." The room fell silent until Devon raised his hand slowly. Second, a few seconds later, the motion was passed unanimously. The founder had triggered the reset, but the board had just approved keeping it. There was no shouting, no slamming doors, just a shift. Outside, she was still arguing with someone on the phone, her voice barely audible through the glass. No one in the boardroom turned to look. Not anymore. The shift had already happened. She came through the front door like a woman still clinging to the illusion of power. The house glass, stone, steel looked the same, but the air felt empty. No music, no scent of her perfume in the foyer, no hum of the coffee maker in the kitchen, just silence and then the sound of a zipper. He was upstairs packing, not frantically, not vengefully, with precision, like someone crossing items off a list he had long since memorized. She ran up the stairs, her heels clacking like accusations. "You're just leaving." She snapped from the hallway, her arms crossed. He didn't look up from the suitcase. 3 pairs of pants, 2 sets of running clothes. The navy blue shirt, she always told him, made him look too polished for meetings. Folded perfectly, packed. He picked up the leather toiletry bag she bought him in Chicago, paused, and put it back down. Then, finally he spoke. I already left 3 years ago. You just made it legal for me. Her breath hitched. He zipped the suitcase. Not a second's hesitation. This is still our house, she said, softer now. You can't just disappear. He stood up. You disappeared first. That's not true. You disappeared when your mother started whispering about inherited shares. When Walter showed up at pitch meetings, I wasn't even invited to. When you stopped introducing me as co-founder and started calling me the silent partner, he turned and looked her directly in the eyes. You disappeared the moment I became an inconvenience to your narrative. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Don't do this, she said finally. Not like this. He reached into his bag and pulled out a simple black frame. He held it out to her. At first she didn't take it, just stared. It was the gala photo. Her lover, Walter's, all smiles, all staged. The banner behind them, their logo floating like a ghost. Remember this? He asked the caption. It said true family, true vision. That was your message, right? She finally took the frame, her hands trembling. I funded that banner, he said quietly. I negotiated the lease for that venue. I paid for the custom glass logo in the lobby. I created the infrastructure that made your vision look viable to investors. And you, his voice didn't raise, but it sharpened. You erased me in front of everyone. Tears welled, but she held them back. We built this together? No, he said. I built it. You rebranded the narrative. She stepped closer to him. Please, don't go. We can fix this. Talk to the board. Go back in. We'll fix it. You already did fix it, he said. You just did it without me. I was trying to protect us. You were trying to protect yourself. He cut her off from feeling like you owed me anything. You wanted to fly and pretend you were never carried. He picked up his keys, walked past her. Where are you going? She asked, her voice cracking. The only place where I can still trust the silence, he answered. She followed him down the stairs, nearly stumbling on the last step. We have a history, she said desperately. We have a life. No, he said again. You have a news cycle, an uncleared boyfriend, and a lawyer who just ended his own career posing in a photo he should have avoided. At the door he paused, looked around the house one last time. The same couch, the same lamp, the same vase she broke during their first real argument, glued back together as if that was enough. She whispered, Why didn't you stop me? He looked at her. I did, he said. You just called it control every time I tried. Then he walked out. She didn't follow. She stood in the doorway, holding that framed photo as if it were proof of something still salvageable, but it wasn't. He had already mourned them in silence, completely, without an audience, and now he wasn't leaving, he was gone. She didn't sleep that night. Not out of guilt, God no, but because the walls of her life had started to shake and she couldn't tell where the tremor was coming from. The board was frozen. Her ID card didn't work. Her lawyer sounded like a man halfway to a stress-induced retirement, and her ex-husband in spirit had packed his life into a suitcase and walked away without a single insult, threat, or plea. That silence haunted her more than any shouting match ever could. So she sat at the marble kitchen island, her manicured nails tapping against her untouched wine glass, refreshing her inbox every 30 seconds. Nothing. No reversal email, no panicked investor. No, this has all been a mistake. Just silence and an inbox full of press clippings that were starting to look like a cruel joke. The notification pinged at 6:11 a.m. She didn't recognize the sender, just a notice from Chasserland Legal Trust. Her first thought, junk mail. But the subject line made her freeze mid-sip. Beneficiary reassignment completed. Equity custody update confirmation. She blinked, opened it, read it, reread it. The document was cold, impersonal, pure procedural language, but its content shattered her. Per the conditions outlined in Trust Agreement CRLT 0417X, Clause 12C. All vested shares held in your name under custodial trust are hereby reassigned due to the violation of the dual fidelity clause, as defined in the initial funding agreement. Her hands shook as she clicked the attachment. A spreadsheet opened. Clean lines. Company name. Share breakdown. Her equity, before, 46.7%. now 0.83%. She stared at the number as if it could fix itself, as if it could glitch and revert, as if at any second the universe was going to admit it was just messing with her. But it didn't. Her control was gone, not reduced, erased. She didn't even own enough shares to have a vote. She couldn't approve a lunch order without a second signature. She scrolled to the bottom of the email. There was the clause in black and white. All shares held in trust shall remain under the beneficiary's control for the duration of a marital fidelity and Baltad fiduciary to the founding custodian. Any documented, recorded, or publicly made breach will result in immediate reassignment to the primary custodian, without need for a board vote or court order. She laughed. She laughed. Then she choked. Then she threw the wine glass across the room. It shattered against the refrigerator, the red staining the stainless steel like blood from a wound she didn't know she had. She grabbed the phone, called her lawyer again. No answer. She called her mother straight to voicemail. She called Walters. He answered hesitantly, like someone answering a call from a burning building he was trapped in. What the hell is this trust clause, she hissed. I warned you, he said, his voice hollow. When he insisted on separate vesting tracks tied to personal conduct, I told you it was overkill. You said it was symbolic. It was until you stood next to me on stage and made it real. She swallowed. Undo it. I can't. Then fix it. I'm no longer legally cleared to represent you. A conflict of interest has been filed. I've been recused. She slammed the phone down. The app opened again. The board was refreshing. Everywhere she looked, his name, the founder, the custodian, the trustee. He hadn't fought her in public. He hadn't posted a single photo, hadn't even replied to her caption. But in the background, silently, he had pressed one clause after another like they were keys on a piano, each one perfectly timed. She had mocked his trust paranoia. She said it was archaic, controlling, excessive, but the trust wasn't meant to control her. It was meant to outlive her, and now it had. She sat on the floor with her back against the cabinets, breathing in short, sharp gasps. No board, no votes, no leverage. Just a single email confirming that everything she once owned now belonged to the man she erased in public. And he didn't even need to raise his voice to do it. It started in a corner of the internet she had never bothered to monitor. Founders Forum Pro, a private, old-school forum where veteran VCs, ex-startup founders, and burnout tech lawyers shared war stories, posted NDAs for fun, and warned each other about bad deals and worse people. No flashy UI, no social media integration, just clean white boxes and brutal sincerity. The clip appeared on a thread titled Boardroom Suicide. Anyone seen this Gala moment? There was no caption, just a 42-second video embedded from a private hosting link. She's on stage smiling, dress impeccable, warm lights, and then, he's family now, she says, gesturing to the man beside her. Her new lover, Walters, her mother's estate lawyer, is behind her nodding proudly. The camera angle is overhead, discreet, time stamped in the lower right corner. The Gala banner crisp in the background. The logo in focus. The first comment appeared within minutes. User Angel Rons. Bold move considering who paid for the stage. Followed by user XO Bajershit. Founders Clause 94B. Textbook case. It's exactly the kind of breach the override was written for. Then, the snowball. User Preserec. Imagine throwing away a majority stake on camera. Narcissism at its finest. User India Killer. Word is the guy left quietly and let the contract do the talking. Respect. User Labdad. Does anyone have the text of the trust clause? I'm creating a template. By 2:47 p.m., someone had reposted the clip to another forum, Exicliax, known for anonymous HR horror stories and failed merger rumors. By 4:01 p.m., the clip hit a Reddit. By 5:30 p.m., someone had set it to a TikTok with the caption "The Jelbob Basis," saying, "He's family now skull." By dusk it had migrated to Twitter. A venture capital firm in Palo Alto quote tweeted it with a reminder for founders. Never marry someone who outsmarts you and weaponizes paperwork instead. And then the media noticed. Not Forbes, not WER, the real ones, the ones that thrive on collapse. Daily Dot ran it first. Founder loses control after Gala gaffe. Watch the clip that sparked the reset. Then TCrunch, how Clause 94B quietly shifted the power dynamic at one of 2025's hottest startups. And then, worst of all, Business Insider, She called him family. The contract called it a conflict of interest. That one stuck. She opened her laptop at 11:06 p.m. and saw 231 new notifications. One from her old mentor. I warned you not to let the lawyers stand behind you. That optics is a coffin. One from her former PR director. The damage control window has closed. Recommend stepping back for optics and a mental health narrative. One from Walters himself. Do not contact me again. Effective immediately, I have resigned. She searched her own name. Every result was the same video, the same moment. Her voice bright, unfiltered. Damning. She slammed the laptop shut, stood up, went to the bathroom, and looked in the mirror. The reflection looked like someone who had just given away the winning lottery ticket and filmed it in HD. Her phone buzzed. A friend, former college roommate. They hadn't spoken in months. The text. Hey, sorry, just saw the clip. Are you okay? Oh, are you really that delusional now? She dropped the phone in the sink. The world didn't need to come for her. She had already built the scaffold, climbed it, smiled for the camera, and signed the guest registry at the door. Wednesday morning. Overcast sky. The city looked washed out, as if even the weather had decided not to take sides. She arrived at the law firm in a car that still had her name on the insurance, but no longer on the company fleet list. The parking validation didn't work. She slammed her sunglasses on the counter and hissed her last name. The receptionist blinked once, nodded, and handed her a visitor's badge of the type usually given to interns and couriers. No one greeted her in the hallway. No one offered her coffee. She wasn't used to walking through a space she once ruled without anyone acknowledging her. The silence cut deeper than anything the internet had thrown at her that week. She kicked open the conference room door without knocking. For people inside, none of them looked surprised. Where's Brian? She snapped the junior partner. He raised his hand hesitantly. Brian has been reassigned. I'm handling the transition now. I'm not here for a transition. I'm here for a reversal. Whatever he filed, undo it. He didn't flinch, just pointed to the folder on the table. Thick, final, cold. She grabbed it as if she were going to bite it and started flipping through pages and pages of things she once considered below her pay grade. Custody authorizations, equity reassignments, amendments to voting rights, document after document, cross-referenced, time-stamped, notarized. And then she saw it. Clause 94B activation event confirmed. Signature founder, initial funder, and custodian status finalized. She kept flipping. Her name appeared less and less until she reached the last few pages and found her title crossed out. A thick black line through co-founder/CEO replaced with a line that read former shareholder under review for breach of fiduciary terms and public misrepresentation. Next page, her lover's name Andrew Sablack, listed as conflicting participant, unauthorized affiliate introduced at a formal investor event. Underneath, no employee record, no NDA, no compliance clearance. Next, Walter S. Franklin, permanently disqualified from estate representation under Section 11C of the Intergenerational Trust, cause exposure to a dual interest and unethical proximity to the beneficiary during the compliance window. Her stomach churned. None of this is legal, the junior partner muttered. She looked at him not with smugness, not with cruelty, just with objectivity. Ma'am, it's not just legal. It's automated and pre-authorized. Years ago, all it needed was the activation event. Her hand trembled as she sank into the nearest chair. What did he do? She whispered a legal assistant by the printer who had been quiet the whole time, spoke up without looking up. He didn't do anything, she said softly. You did. He just prepared for it. The room went silent. It wasn't just the documents. It was the weight of knowing that this hadn't been a counterattack. It had been a slow, patient architecture of consequences. Every clause linked to another clause, every trust mapped to conduct, every silence, every deferral, every time she sensed it and let her lead. It had all been a ledger, and she had signed every page. Somewhere, outside, a bus drove by with a full wrap ad for her company's new campaign, We Continue to Design the Future. Her face used to be part of that image. It had been cropped out this week. She stood up, no fire, no voice, just a kind of dead weight in her chest that felt like falling, but slower. She didn't ask for a copy of the folder. She didn't threaten legal action, not because she couldn't, but because she finally understood. He didn't burn down her empire. He just built his exit so carefully, so invisibly, that when she tripped the wire, All that was left was the echo of her own voice, saying, "He's family now," and the knowledge that everyone had heard it, especially him.